Actually, at that time, Latin language was used. And studied the main language for education, commerce and religion and government and the Western world. Why? I have said that after the discovery of Vasco da Gama, Columbus and others, many countries spread over there and English language spread many parts of this world. But why Latin language dominated 600 years back? British language is not Latin. Roman civilizations that is written. In the 16th century, the political changes in Europe, Latin lost its position. Okay. So the Roman Empire and the French, Italian and English became the dominant language in Europe. Actually, why people will be following your language? That is a different discussion, but I can add a little bit about that. Actually, your language will be followed if you have three power. One, first time, that is the military power. Second time, the economic power. Third time is the cultural power. English is all international organization maximum they are in World Bank, including World Bank to United Nations and other in European first English speaking countries. Okay, so they have their power, economic power, military power and the cultural power. Okay, তাদের রেডিও আবিষ্কার থেকে শুরু করে সমস্ত কিছুই তারা এই বলিউড মুভি থেকে শুরু করে সমস্ত কিছু কালচারি যে জিনিসগুলো শর্ট ফিল্ম থেকে শুরু করে তারা কে শুরু করেছে প্রথম তারা. So they are culturally enriched and for this reason. But when Latin language was followed, Latins or Roman civilization culture, their economy and political power was far better and more than French, Italian and English. So 600 years back, Latin or Roman Empire dominated that period, and for this reason, Latin language had been followed by the teaching and learning arena and by the learners and teachers all over the world. And thus Latin became optional subject. So when English, France and the Italy, they became the powerful country, then people left Latin language and started teaching English, French, Italian. They started English, French, Italian, but among this English, French and Italian, they picked English. Thus Latin became optional subject and French, Italian and English became the main subject in European school curriculum. That is their history. And however, the study of the classical Latin were at the time used to study the classical work of Virgil, Ovid and Cicero. Actually, what did I say? The Roman civilization, the earliest civilization. Why? Because their civilization is spread all over the world with their publications, with their achievement. Alexander the Great and the others, they were called, they were the ambassador of their civilization. And what is the other ambassador? They have also great writers, the classical writers, Virgil, Ovid and Cicero. This is Roman poet. What did I say? কখন আপনার ভাষা মানুষ ফলো করবে যদি আপনি পলিটিক্যালি, ইকোনমিক্যালি এন্ড কালচারালি. সো রোমান সভ্যতার পলিটিক্যাল পাওয়ার, ইকোনমিক পাওয়ার ছিল এবং তাদের কালচারাল পাওয়ার ছিল. কালচারাল পাওয়ার কি? This Roman poet Virgil, and he composed Aeneid. Okay, so many things are there. Okay, usually Virgil was in English and was a poet, Roman poet. He composed the three of the most famous poem in Latin literature. Actually, Latin literature at that time, the classical literature. Classical literature কি? টেন্ডুলকার অনেক শট মারেন কিন্তু কিছু কিছু ক্লাসিক শট মারেন. ঠিক আছে? So the classic literature, Latin literature is called the classical literature because their literature was first for the contribution of such kind of writer. What are the writer? Roman poet Virgil. And he wrote three great writings in Latin language. And what are the things? The Latin language? Eclogus, Gorgias and the epic Aeneid. Before Roman Aeneid and the Virgil Aeneid, we didn't have the idea what is an epic. But this man composed a long narrative poem in which language? তাহলে এপিক যদি আপনার ভালো লাগে তাহলে আপনাকে কোন ভাষা জানতে হবে? Yes. So that was the situation, and the modern scholars considered his authorship of this poem dubious. Virgil's work has been wide and deep influence on Western literature, most probably Dante's Divine Comedy, in which Virgil appears as the author's guide, and through Hell and Purgatory, Virgil has been traditionally ranked as one of the Rome's greatest poet. And his Aeneid, pronunciation is Aeneid. Aeneid is also considered as the national epic of ancient Rome, a title held since composition. So another writer, Roman writer, is Ovid. Okay, he has composed literature in. Although Ovid enjoyed enormous popularity during his lifetime, the Emperor Augustus banished him in Tomis and Danican province of the Black Sea, where he remained a decade until his death. So he also composed his writing in Latin language. And another one is Cicero. Okay, the Cicero was also composed literature in Roman language, but Cicero is a statesman, lawyer, scholar, philosopher, an academic skeptic. So who tried to avoid optimate principles during the political crisis. Okay, so these are their important personalities. They compose literature in which language? Not in English language, not in French, not in Latin. So they had political power, they had economic power, and they had cultural power. And for this reason, 600 years back, Latin literature was classical literature, and Latin language was classical language. And people had been following Latin language as a medium for communication, and Latin language teaching and learning method was the only oldest method in English language teaching and learning. Okay, so his influence on the Latin language was immense. Whose influence? That means Cicero's. And he wrote more than 3/4 of the extant Latin literature, and is known to have existed in his lifetime. And it has been said that subsequent proofs was either a reaction against or a return to his style. Not only that Latin, but in European language up to the 19th century, Cicero introduced into Latin the arguments and the chief schools. So this. So this is why Latin language was spreaded before 600 years back. But in the 6th, 17th, 18th, 16th and 19th century, children in Europe were entering to the grammar school. William Shakespeare, you have heard, that means William Shakespeare started only in which school? Grammar school. And grammar school where Latin language was taught. Latin language, Latin grammar rules, vocabulary, writing simple sentences and translation were the chief component of foreign language teaching and learning strategies. Okay, so that is up to the 16th, 17th and 18th century. For what? That is for the economic and political power of the Roman civilization. Okay, and foreign language learning was a fearful experience for the foreign language learners at that time when Latin language teaching was being taught. Actually, at that time, language learning was a situation not so easy. Actually, the student and the learners would be afraid when they would go to learn that language. Why? Because যদি কোনো একটা মিস্টেক করতো তাহলে তাদেরকে কি করা হতো, একটা বানান যদি ভুল করতো, তুমি এই বানান জানো না, অনেক সিভিয়ার পানিশমেন্ট দেওয়া হতো। এবং দ্যাট ইজ দ্য সিনারিও। ল্যাটিন ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজের ভাষা শেখার সবচেয়ে বড় কথা ছিল যে হচ্ছে আপনাকে অ্যাকুরেট হতে হবে। অ্যাকুরেট কি? ইন স্পেলিং অ্যান্ড প্রোনাউন্সিয়েশন। মূলত স্পেলিং দেখা হতো এবং সেখানে কি দেখা হতো? ভোকাবুলারি পড়ানো হতো, গ্রামার পড়ানো হতো। এবং গ্রামার এবং ভোকাবুলারি এই দুটো জায়গায় হচ্ছে আপনাকে কি করতে হবে? অ্যাকুরেট। এবং ওয়ার্ড মিনিং জানতে হবে। কেন ওয়ার্ড মিনিং জানতে হবে? কারণ আপনাকে কি পড়তে হবে? ক্লাসিক্যাল লিটারেচার পড়তে হবে। ক্লাসিক্যাল লিটারেচার কোন ভাষায় লেখা? ল্যাটিন ভাষায় লেখা। সো আপনাকে ল্যাটিন ভাষার এই সমস্ত কিছুর কি জানতে হবে? অর্থ জানতে হবে। কোন জানতে হবে? এবং সেটা যদি কোনোভাবে কেউ মিস করতো তাহলে তাকে হচ্ছে ব্রুটাল পানিশমেন্টের মুখোমুখি হতে হতো। দ্যাট ইজ দ্য ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ লার্নিং অ্যান্ড টিচিং সিনারিও ইন ইউরোপ আপ টু ইভেন 19th and 18th century. ওকে, এখনো ইংলিশ আসে না। ইংলিশ কখন আসলো? যেটা আমরা বললাম, ফর দ্য ডিসকভারি। আ ফিউ লিঙ্গুইস্ট লাইক রোজার অ্যাসচেম
Montaigne